Now we've seen so far that, well, there may be a few steps to create our logical volumes and extend them. However, this is a mature system and there are lots of tools available to check the integrity of the metadata, to be able to manage our logical volumes and to be able to manage our volume groups. One of those tools we're going to look at is vgchange. We're going to see that volume groups are activated by default automatically and we don't have to really worry about it. And on an activated volume group that's available, let's say, all of the logical volumes then are going to be available themselves. But if I need to bring a volume group down, then of course all of the logical volumes are going to be unavailable. So I can use the vgchange -a, and yes is going to make the volume group available. If we have the argument no, then it won't be available. And I can either use -a or minus available if that makes it more readable. So these are just some of the things that we can do, sort of activating and deactivating our volume groups. But as we'll see from the command line, there's a little bit more, and especially to do with then controlling the amount of metadata copies that we have. Moving on to the command line, we should be able to demonstrate this. So with everything running, if I run my lvscan command looking at my logical volume, we can see then that all of the logical volumes are active. Even if I go ahead and umount/data, so remember all we're doing then is unmounting, or if you can kind of see the link here, we're deactivating the file system, but of course we're not touching the logical volume. So if I go back and look at my lvscan, then the logical volume is still active. But if I go in and take a look at vgchange, and we can then specify minus available, or we could just use a lowercase a in the single hyphen, and we'll say no for our volume group name. And of course available has the extra a in it. There you go, once you can spell. Now when we go back and run the lvscan, we can see that all of the logical volumes that were in the volume group are now inactive, and we'd need to make the volume group active again. If we take a look at vgchange itself though, so if I go through and run vgchange and minus help, we can see there's actually quite a lot of options available to it. So again, we can go through and look at things like our volume group metadata copies. We could just have our metadata copies and the number of copies that we want to store. We can then go through and use things like the -x to stop it being resizable. So there's lots of things that we could use, and this is part of the strength of it, is that there's a huge amount of tools available that you can use to manage the logical volume. So we can't just purely look at the BTRFS system and say, look, it's really simple. You can see that there's an awful lot of knowledge that goes into managing your file systems, and it's learning the best of both worlds and using the tools appropriately, especially as newer tools start to mature and have more tool sets available to them. So let's activate it again, so we can go back up, and then this is one that's spelled correctly, so we'll use that. Oops, sorry. So it's actually here it's saying now active, because of course I still left it at no, but now going through and choosing yes, we can see now one logical volume in the volume group is now active, and running the lvscan, where everything back up and running. And then let's go through and run mount/dev vg1 and then the data lv through to the data directory. So we've got everything now back up and running the way it was, but we've learned then a little bit more about some of the tools that we have. Let's move back into the slides now so we can start looking at snapshotting the data.